Hello, how are you? Joan is my name, and today we're looking at some of the menstrual disorders. We looked at the menstrual cycle, we looked at women's reproductive health. So we're going to look at some of the menstrual some of the what can I call it, the menstrual disorders. So the first menstrual disorder we're going to look at is called polycystic ovarian syndrome, or as most people call it, PCOS. Many people like confusing PCOS, don't know how to go about PCOS and what it is. So PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is really a complex it's a complex hormonal condition. Polycystic literally means many cysts. So polycystic means many cysts. That's like a literal word. It means many cysts. So there are many partially formed follicles in the ovaries. Remember, when we are looking at when follicle stimulating hormone acts on the ovaries, there will be growth of follicles, which are fluid filled. With an egg inside, and the dominant follicle eventually erupts, and then we have ovulation and the egg is released. But so these follicles are partially formed, and contain an egg. Like I said, every follicle contains an egg and a bit of water, but these eggs in these follicles rarely grow to maturity, so you remain with many fluid filled partially grown follicles, and they rarely release an egg, or they release an egg. The egg that is produced can rarely be fertilized. So you find that one of the leading cause of infertility is the PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, can be a contributor to infertility. That doesn't mean that everyone with PCOS doesn't get to conceive. They get to conceive, only that some of them experience infertility. So what happens? So I've said it's complex. It's a complex hormonal condition. Polycystic literally means many cysts, and the cysts are usually partially grown follicles that have an egg. They rarely release the egg, or when it's released, it's rarely an egg that can actually be fertilized. So women with PCOS also have high levels of insulin, because they have what we call insulin resistance. That means the insulin cannot pass across the cells, and remember, it's the insulin that will help to break down the glucose. So if it can't pass across the cells, you'll have issues with the breakdown of glucose, that's leading to conditions later on like diabetes. So most of them have high levels of insulin because the insulin isn't absorbed. They have high insulin resistance, and therefore the insulin remains in the bloodstream. So that's another thing that women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome usually have. Another thing they have is they have high levels of male hormones known as androgens. So you'll find that they have a lot of testosterone, increased levels of testosterone, and the other male androgens or male hormones. The cause of polycystic ovarian syndrome is actually not yet known. So I want you to be careful in this video. The cause of polycystic ovarian syndrome is actually not yet known or fully understood. So it's actually not yet known or fully understood. However, family history, genetics, hormones, and lifestyle play a role. So the cause is not yet fully understood. However, family history, genetics, hormones, and lifestyle play an important role. So, family history, genetics, lifestyle, hormones play an important role in the formation of PCOS. So, the cause is not yet known, but then insulin resistance is present in 90% of the. So, 4 out of 5 women with polycystic ovarian syndrome have insulin resistance. So, it's one of the high indicators. Okay, so it's one of the very, very high indicators of polycystic ovarian syndrome. I'm very sorry about the noise in the background. I'll have a better place next time. Yeah. So if you're a woman and you have if you're a woman and you have an aunt, a mother, an aunt or sister with polycystic ovarian syndrome, you are 50% more likely to develop polycystic ovarian syndrome. So genetics really plays an important role. So if your mother, if your aunt or sister have suffered with polycystic ovarian syndrome, you're more likely to develop it. So 50% of women whose mothers, sisters, aunts have polycystic ovarian syndrome are more likely to develop polycystic ovarian syndrome. So, worldwide, like on a general, polycystic ovarian syndrome affects 8 to 13% of women. So, but about 70% of those actually remain undiagnosed. So, it affects about 8 to 13% of women, and about 70% of these cases remain undiagnosed. So, it's one of the things that you need. So, it means out of 100 women, at least 13 will have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And if your aunt, sister, or mother has polycystic ovarian syndrome, your chances of getting polycystic ovarian syndrome increase drastically. So a third of the women have the polycystic ovarian syndrome. They have cysts in their when they go for an ultrasound scan. They have cysts. So a third of all women. That means 33.3% of women, when they go into an ultrasound scan, they are able to see that they have cysts. But that doesn't mean that they have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So I've seen many are they called sonographers, radiographers, when they see someone with many cysts, and then they're like, oh, this person might have polycystic ovarian syndrome. No. 33% of women have very many cysts, and remember, we said only 8 to 13% of them have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So, having many cysts doesn't mean that you have the syndrome. Are we together? Having many cysts doesn't mean that you have the syndrome. There are other factors that we consider in order to say that you have the syndrome. To be diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, women need to have at least two characteristics of these three that I'm going to talk about. So, in order for a woman to be diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, they need to have two characteristics of the three that I'm going to talk about. So, they need to have irregular or absent periods. If a woman's periods are irregular or absent, that's one of the things that might determine whether they have, like, so you need to have two characteristics of these three. Number two is acne, excess facial or body hair. So acne, excess facial or body hair, hair loss on the head, scalp hair loss, high levels of testosterone, hormones, and similar androgens in the blood. So all those are testosterone, like things caused by testosterone, having acne, having excess facial hair, body hair growth, losing hair on the scalp, but having high levels of testosterone or similar hormones in the blood. So those are two. So if you have these two, if you have irregular or absent periods and you have acne, or excess hair, chesty hair, scalp hair loss, high levels of testosterone hormone, we now say that you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. You actually do not need to have numbers. You do not need to check for number three in the ultrasound scan, which is the many cysts. So you need to have, so if you have the many cysts in an ultrasound scan, you either need to have an irregular or absent period, or acne, excess facial hair, high levels of testosterone. So if you have many cysts and you don't have the irregular or absent periods, and you don't have a lot of facial hair, you just have many cysts, you don't have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So the next thing is so for women aged under 20 years, ultrasounds are not recommended. So usually for them, you diagnose them if they have the first two. That's when you diagnose them with polycystic ovarian syndrome, because it's better not to have an ultrasound scan for someone who's under 20 years. It's not good to expose them to the effects of the ultrasound scan. Uh, if they have the irregular periods, if they have the acne, facial hair, they have high levels of testosterone hormone, you can confirm a diagnosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay, so what are some of the symptoms of polycystic ovarian syndrome? So, women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome may experience, number one, irregular menstrual cycle. Periods may be less frequent or more frequent due to less frequent ovulation. So, people with polycystic ovarian syndrome, one of the things that they do is that they have less frequent ovulation, which contributes to its one of the leading cause of infertility. It's because their ovulation period is actually less frequent. Okay. So then we have amenorrhea. Amenorrhea, those are women with no periods at all. Some women with PCOS do not actually menstruate in some cases for many years. There is excessive facial or body hair growth, there is acne, there is scalp hair loss, there is reduced fertility because of I already explained that, and mood changes, obesity, they tend to gain weight because of the insulin resistance, sleep apnea, they tend to lack all those things. And yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so we're going to do a recap for all this. So polycystic ovarian syndrome is a long-term condition requiring long-term management. It's a long-term condition requiring long-term management. Okay, so let me awesome. So how do you because it's a long-term condition, and it requires long-term management. So management is dependent on the symptoms that you experience. So the first thing that you might need is lifestyle modification, since PCOS leads to they experience insulin resistance. So you need to watch what you eat. You need to exercise daily because one of the symptoms is obesity. So lifestyle modification, then also weight reduction. If you are overweight, so it's raining. There is a bit of background noise. I hope you can hear me. Yeah. So with weight management, 5 to 10% reduction can provide significant health benefits. Just a 5 to 10% reduction can provide significant health benefits in someone with polycystic ovarian syndrome. So then we go to the what does losing weight do? Losing weight helps to restore normal hormone production, which can help regulate periods and improve fertility, also improve mood. Also improve mood. So then also help with acne and then the scalp things. Okay, so then we go to the medication. Sorry about that. When we go to the medication, it includes oral contraceptives, often prescribed to help with conception, to help regulate the menstrual cycle, reduce excessive hair growth and acne. The other thing, and prevent also maintain the lining of the womb. So because and also excessive thickening of the uterus. Then we can also give medication to block testosterone hormone, and this includes spironolactone. This will help to block testosterone hormone because one of the key indicators for PCOS is having a lot of testosterone hormone or male androgen hormones in the bloodstream. The other thing is I talked about spironolactone helping to block testosterone hormone. Then we can give also insulin sensitizing medication, for example, metformin. Metformin helps prevent insulin resistance. So we have metformin that helps prevent insulin resistance. Then also so helping insulin be utilized and eventually also leading to weight loss, weight management. So then we also have medication for improving ovulation and fertility to avoid for example clomiphene citrate, then also aromatase enzyme inhibitor. So these help to stimulate ovulation. PCOS can also be treated using supplements. We shall look at them later at a later video. And then also we need yeah, so in PCOS, you look at what are you managing? Are you managing the weight? Are you managing insulin resistance that might result into diabetes? Or are you promoting fertility or the period? So you look at, is it the weight that you're looking at? Is it the periods that you're looking at? Is it fertility that you're improving? Or is the let me say it again because I kind of confused myself. So are you doing weight? Are you doing insulin resistance? Are you promoting fertility, or are you regulating periods? So when you're looking at polycystic ovarian syndrome, you have to look at what is the need right now. What is the thing that you need to manage right now? It's a long term condition, and really the causes are a bit here and there. So then we have what are some of the complications of PCOS? We have increased risk of getting diabetes, having cholesterol and cardiovascular diseases because it leads to obesity, like hypertension and things like that, and of course infertility as one of the leading issues, and PCOS being one of the leading causes of infertility. So we shall in the videos we shall be looking at what are some of the things. So if you're managing PCOS, if you're managing periods, what do you use? Which supplements can you use? If you're managing fertility, which supplements to use? If you're managing weight and PCOS, which supplements to use? And also if you're managing insulin resistance. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned. Keep listening and watching over and over again until you're able to explain it to yourself if you're suffering from this, or to a client in case you're in a pharmacy. Visit any Vine pharmaceutical outlet for more information about polycystic ovarian syndrome and its supplements to use.